All right, well, thank you all so much for being here. My name is Ricky Treon. I'm the Director of Publishing for Blue Handle, the imprint that is so very proud to be publishing Darlene's The Center of the Earth. And, whenever we were able to get this book, I was so excited, not only because of how well written it is, but also how well researched it is. I was a newspaper reporter in a former life, and so research and telling people's stories and tying them to the past, but also making sure that they're relevant now was something I always took pride in. And so I fell in love with the story, and like I said, I was so happy whenever Darlene agreed to let us publish it. And the first question I usually ask folks like Darlene is take us through the journey to get this story published, because every book starts with an idea and then, anywhere from 2 to 30 years later, it ends up being on the table in print. So, introduce yourself to everyone and let them know, why you started writing The Center of the Earth.
Absolutely. So, I'm loud.
I don't need a voice amplifier myself. I am very
So this has been a very, very long journey from start to finish. The Center of the Earth took 7 years to get published. And the reason for that is I received over 150 rejections from this book. And there were days when I really thought, maybe I didn't write a good book, maybe I should just move on to something else. And then finally, when I thought it was over, Blue Handle Publishing decided to give me a contract. So I'm so grateful to be here today. So the inspiration for this book came about from a documentary called An Unknown Country, which aired on PBS a couple years back. And it was about Jewish refugees who found safety in Ecuador during the Holocaust. And I'm Ecuadorian American, and I love World War II history, and then I thought it was so strange that I had never heard this history before, and it just had to bring work. So I set up and started writing the first draft of this book, but then I got stuck because there really wasn't that much information about this history. So what I did was I went on Facebook, and I found a Facebook group called Jews of Ecuador, and it was run by the children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of these original refugees. And I made a post on their page, and I said, I'm currently in Kansas, I'm in Texas, and I would love to write a book about this topic, but I'm having trouble finding resources. And about 30 minutes later, I had all these comments saying, my father would love to talk to you, my grandmother would love to talk to you, my great-grandmother would love to talk to you. And little by little, I got to interview 8 of these original refugees, and they were kids when they went to Ecuador. And unfortunately, only 2 of them are still with us now, and 6 who have passed away have commemorated here in this plaque. Because without these people I interviewed, I wouldn't have a story. Because there was just nothing out there. So their stories formed what is the Center of the Earth, and I'm forever grateful for them.
I love hearing that story. It is, like I said, it's one of my favorite parts about you have the narrative, you have the novel, and then you have the author's notes, and you have the photos in the back, and all of the footnotes, which are all incredible and really, make the book really come together. One question, I don't even know if I've ever asked you this in all the conversations we've had. Why did you decide to write it as a novel as opposed to some sort of nonfiction?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I did think about that, but I'm definitely more of a fiction writer, and I love writing for children. And I thought that this would make an excellent story for kids, especially kids who are into historical stories. And, the same goes right for books that you want to see on the shelves. So, and it's used on the shelves, so I decided to do it myself. But like I said earlier, it has been such a long and hard journey. With all of you here, I have to say I mean it. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, and we also, Blue Handle Publishing, thanks you all for being here, because we love whenever there's excitement around a new release, around one of our authors. Did you have any kind of formal presentation that you wanted to make about the Survivor Peace Work and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so I did bring a few photos, and there are more photos in the author's note in his book, so I can start passing these around. So this photo an Ecuadorian consul. He worked in Bremen, Germany at the time of World War II. And he just had this change of heart one day, and he saved 40 Jewish families from perishing in the concentration camps, Nazi Europe. And thanks to him, about 8,000 or so descendants are alive today. So his decision really made an impact on these families. So that's the first photo.
Oh, actually, I'm just going to start again.
And this is a photograph of Jewish refugees arriving in Ecuadorian waters. This is about 1940 or so. And because these photos are old, the quality is not, superior to what we have on our phones today. But you can just see how happy they are and how relieved they look to be in a safe place at such a horrible time in history. And this picture, this is like one of my favorite photos. These are about 40 or so Jewish refugees, and they're in front of the La Mitad del Mundo monument in Quito, Ecuador. This is about 1945. Most of them are teenagers, and some of the people I interviewed are in this photo. This is when they had just graduated from high school. And it's a great photo because you can really see how many people found safety in this little country called Ecuador. And this final photo is a very special one. So, one of the main characters of the novel, his name is Werner Rubinstein. Well, he is based on Werner Vogel. Werner Vogel was born in Germany in 1926. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2022. He lived to the ripe age of 96 years old. So, his story was that he had his bar mitzvah, and just a few weeks after that, his parents told him, "We're sending you and your sister to England. You can no longer live in Germany." And I can't imagine being a 13-year-old kid and thinking, "What do you mean I'm going to another country without my parents?" He did get to go with his sister, which was good, but still, imagine how terrifying it was. So for years, about 2.5 years, he and his sister Erica, they had no idea if their parents were still alive. And then one day in 1942, he received a postcard from his parents with an Ecuadorian stamp. And they said, "Guess what? We're still alive, we're in Ecuador, and you and your sister come to join us." So this book is dedicated to everyone I interviewed, but Werner especially. His story is really touched me, and I have to think about my main characters after them.
And so, are all of those photos printed in the back of the book?
Yes, all of those photos are in the back of the book, and there are much more in the author's note, as you can really see how this part of history affected so many individuals, and I'm so grateful that refugees gave me the honor of telling their story. Yes. They were pretty much on their own. Historical records show that there was a population of 14 Jewish people in Ecuador. Yeah, after they got there, most of them went to Quito, was the capital city of the country, and some of them stayed in Guayaquil, which is the coastal city. And then the community grew to about 3,000 pretty quickly, and it stayed pretty steady, and then some people did move to the United States, some went back to Europe, some went to Australia. And today, the population is, at least in my field, is 80 families. 80 families. 80 families. Yeah, 80 families. So, it's shrunken a little bit, but there is a pretty steady community now. But yeah, back in World War II, that's 14.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Yes, there's a section at the very end of the book, there's an author's note, which explains how I tracked down the refugees, how we formed a relationship, how I wrote the book, some of the rejections I went through, plus photographs, in addition to the 4 that I shared.
And then there are also footnotes on some of the pages where
Yes.
where Darlene explains maybe some of the Jewish traditions that a lot of readers may not be familiar with, some translation, and some of that sort of stuff. So it really is a very, like I said, it's really a very complete work in a lot of ways, which, as an editor, I really appreciated when going through the book, because even if it, we had to decide to keep footnotes or do we not, but we had all the information, so we knew, what we maybe would want to keep or leave out. Yeah. A lot of that is a very personal preference between author and editor, and it's always a conversation. It's always back and forth. What do we do? What looks good on the page? Like, if a page is going to have 16 footnotes and it's going to take up half the page, that's one thing. But Darlene's were very spread out, so we kept them as footnotes, as opposed to some of our nonfiction work where we do more of the index at the back. And you had a question?
Yes. Yes, so that's a great question. So, topic of the Holocaust can be very graphic depending on which aspect you're looking into. And that was definitely something I thought about. So, to keep it, let's say, explaining for a younger audience, there are really no very graphic details of what happened. However, there are many times in the book where Werner does wonder what is going on with his family, and that is based on the people I interviewed. Everyone I interviewed lost at least 10 family members. Someone she lost was at a state. So it was a huge impact on them, and some of them had to deal with survivor skills. So I tried to make things for children. Yes. Of course. Yeah, that's a great question. And history is not always very clean. History can be very ugly, and these are conversations to have with children. But of course, in a way that they're able to understand.
Yes. I wondered if the people you were interviewing were close to the age of your main character.
They were.
When they left you.
They were. The youngest one, he was 8 years old when he left, so about the age of a second grader, and the oldest one, she was 14 years old.
And what age do you think this book will be appropriate for? Middle school or?
Yeah, I would say between the ages of roughly 9 to 13, but I mean, that doesn't mean it's limited to only that age. Really, anyone is welcome to read it.
Yeah, I can tell you from experience that as an adult, it is still quite an incredible read. But it's funny that's a question we get from booksellers sometimes because of the subject matter, because of the ages of the characters. It takes it through a decent little swath of their childhood. So we get that question: is it middle grade, is it young adult? But it definitely is very suitable for that middle grade audience. But it has something for a young adult audience. It has a very sweet developing relationship between two young adults. And then, for the adults, because we have a lot of that context, because we know about World War II and the Holocaust already, that there's a lot to build on with that too. So adults, I think will find it is a very compelling piece of literary fiction as well. But that is a great question. When the bookseller started asking us at first, we were like, "Hey, Darlene, what do you think we?" Because she writes that stuff, whereas we publish a wide variety for all ages. So she is actually the one to tell us who the audience would be most appropriate for. But yes, excellent question. We got time for probably one more really thoughtful questions. By the way, I love this. Yes.
I wonder if you could talk more about dating and some inspiring person and using it's how exciting it was.
To repeat the question. Oh, sorry. The question was if I can talk more about how it felt to connect with these refugees and how I formed those relationships with them afterwards. So I do have to give a big shout out to my husband David, who's their reporter. So he is very supportive of all my sometimes crazy ideas, especially being a writer. Because being a writer, there's no guarantee your book will get published. The statistic is about 1%. So someone who sits down day and writes the book and finishes it only has a 1% chance of it getting published. So you have a 99% chance of failure, but I decided to look at my possible 1% of failure. So in 2018, when I told my student cousin David about some of these refugees, a few of them lived in the Washington, D.C. area. And he was on board immediately and said, yes, let's make a trip, let's go to Washington, let's go to the Holocaust Museum, let's get some archives, you know, we'll run a car, I'll drive to their homes, and that's how I got to meet some of them in person, and I really couldn't have done it without him. It's amazing.
Like I said, she was as much journalist as anything while writing this book, which is definitely something that was very close to my heart. We appreciate all of the wonderful questions. You'll have time to ask her some shorter ones if you want when you get your book signed, and the way that'll work is you come up, you get the book signed, and then you'll pay for it with me over here. And then we also have a raffle if you want to fill out your name and email, you can do that. And, hopefully you're still hanging around whenever we draw, and we can give you all of this stuff here. If not, we will find a way to get it to you. But, yeah, we're gonna open it up, and, we are so excited that y'all are here and are going to get to read Darlene's book if you haven't already, since it technically went on sale on Tuesday, but
Yeah.
Today was the best day to have this celebration. Any last thoughts before we move on to that, Darlene?
Sure. So I just want to close up this presentation by saying if you have a dream, no matter how out of reach it might seem, go for it, because, you never know what will happen online. So I'm glad that I get to do it, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you for coming.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that, Darlene. We appreciate it. All right. We are open for book signing and all of the other fun stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. You just don't want to overwhelm her at the table.
Yeah, for sure.
Email address for the raffle.